everyone, welcome to Commander Pop Culture. If you like the video, be sure to subscribe so you'll be notified of future content. This will be the last Commander Master spoiler video of the series. I'll talk about the colorless deck next. Stick around to the end so I could give you some special messaging. Zuladoc, Void Gorger. It's been a while since my first video, so I'll tell you what he does. He's a 6-drop that gives your colorless spells Cascade if the mana value of your spell is 7 or greater. I kind of have the same feelings about this as I did back in day one. I just think this kind of forces you to build a deck that's extremely risky. You're going to have an obnoxiously scary curve. Worried that cascading twice is just simply not enough to rubber band you back into the game, because you're going to be doing a lot of turns of just setting up. The game's getting faster, so I don't know if it works. All right, Obtruse Archaic. Vigilance, and you can tap it to activate an ability. You have a triggered ability you control from a colored source. The way I'm feeling about this deck is if you're being forced to play spells of 7 or more mana, everything else that's not 7 or more mana better be ramping you. I think this is going to be used as like a voltaic key or a manifold key, because you're going to be copying like your Soul Ring mana effects. This for 4 mana to get a voltaic key effect, I just don't think it's worth your time. Calamity of the Titans. This additional cost to cast a spell reveal colors creature from your hand. Exile each creature or planeswalker with mana value less than that mana value. I don't like situational cards, so I don't like this one. And it specifically has to be a colorless creature, so I really don't like this. If it was any colorless spell, then I might be more lenient with it, but I'm not. Darksteel Monolith. Once each turn, you may pay 0 rather than pay the mana cost of a colorless spell that cast from your hand. Well, I guess it does something the turn you play it. It will start casting free spells even after that. So this is 3 free spells on cast if your commander's in play. This could be good. Not 100% certain though, because to get full advantage of this, you need to be casting big spells off of this. If you're casting a 4-drop off of that 0 ability, it's kind of a feel bad, and it's a quality of life kind of card. Between these 3, I guess this one is a little bit better. Desecrate Reality. For each opponent, exile 1 target permanent player controls that is even mana value. Adamant. If there are 3 colorless mana spent to cast a spell, return a permanent card with an odd mana value from your graveyard to the battlefield. If it didn't have the even odd clauses, I would love this card, but since it doesn't, I hate it.
That is one big pile of shit.
Rise of the Eldrazi. For 12 whopping mana, destroy target permanent, target player draws 4 and takes an extra turn after this one. It just feels weird, because destroying 1 permanent isn't relevant enough. Drawing the 4 cards and taking an extra turn is relevant, but I feel like it's not doing anything particularly well. Like, I get it. The destroying a permanent is like, in essence, Ulamog trigger. The drawing 4 cards is the Kozilek trigger, and the extra turn is the Emrakul trigger from the OG ones. And you're kind of wrapping all their cast triggers into 1 card. The Nicety is it can't be countered, so you're guaranteed this no matter what. I'd rather play Time Stretch if I'm going to be spending a lot of mana for extra turns, or I'd rather be playing a cheap removal spell if I'm going to be destroying something, or if I'm going to be drawing 4 cards, I could also get that for cheaper too. And even, I could probably draw more cards for that level of mana being spent. Flare of Loyalties. When you cast a spell, gain control of a target creature till end of turn, untap it till end of turn. It has base power and toughness at 10/10, gains Trample, Annihilator 2, and Haste. It also is a creature. Annihilator 2 isn't good enough. At least you're giving the Trample Annihilator, and then you're borrowing someone's creature, and then you're getting it again. I guess Flare of Loyalties is alright, because it does something the turn you play. If it wasn't doing anything, I'd loop this with the other Annihilator 2 or fewer creatures that have came out in the past. Amathras Ghostfire Initiate. Enters with X+1/+1 counters. If you put a 1/1 counter on another colorless creature, you may put 1 on it, and when it dies, manifest any number of cards from the top of your library equal the number of counters on it. I'm not a fan of this card, mostly because when you need card advantage, you need it now, and I think that death trigger is like the main draw of this thing. You're not guaranteed to be flipping over creatures with this. I think most of the creatures are going to be manifesting off the top of your library are going to be lands and non-creature stuff. Very situational and RNG riddled. Skirting Cicada has flash. Color spells have flash. Whenever you cast a color spell, it gets +X/+X for X of the mana value. It's basically a non-legendary version of the Thopter that came out in Brothers War, but it's okay. Ugin's Mastery. Whenever you cast a colorless creature spell, manifest the top card of your library. Whenever you attack with creatures with total power 6 or greater, you may turn a face-down creature control face up. Okay, so this basically helps you cheat your Eldrazi into play, or flipping him over. It's just most of your Eldrazi or big mana stuff have cast triggers, so it's a non-bow with your commander, and I don't understand why they put this in the deck.
Sensational.
All right, yeah, Kozilek, probably the best colorless commander in the game. I don't think Zul'Dok competes with him, but people are allowed to play whatever they would like, and chasing those cascade triggers just sounds fun. And Kozilek, the Great Distortion, will definitely trigger Zul'Dok. Endbringer doesn't trigger it, but he's a pretty sweet creature in that card advantage engine. You just have to leave at least 6 mana up to use on your opponent's turns. Hopefully the mana package, and we see it, is significant. Endless One, I guess it has flex. You could play it for cheap as a blocker, so people aren't just beating on you for free. And then if the game goes long enough and you have a lot of mana, you could get what you need for Zul'Dok triggers. If that betrays, this is actually one of the better Annihilator 2 Eldrazi, because its bottom ability is it combos with itself. Whenever they sack a non-token permanent, it comes back to the battlefield under your control. So it's kind of like half of the chick from Kaldheim, the black commander. I just don't remember her name, but essentially you're stealing the stuff that they sack. Matter Reshaper, say card advantage Eldrazi on Death Trigger. Not even a whole lot of card advantage, I'll be that. I don't know why it's in here, to be honest. Oblivion Sour, exile top 4. You may put any number of land cards from exile on the battlefield under your control. It's just a RNG ramp spell that I don't like. Ancient Stone Idol. I also don't understand why this is in here, because it gets cheaper for each attacking creature you control, but because your spells are so expensive, you'll probably only be casting one thing a turn unless you have your commander in play. Thus, getting that cost reduction is probably utterly difficult to happen. You're playing fewer creatures that are really big, not a lot of creatures that are really small, and you're not getting a whole lot out of that cost reduction. Duplicant, it's just a bad removal spell. If it's not 2 or less, I wouldn't play it. And it doesn't trigger Zul'Dok, so why is it in here? Hangerback Walker, again, has flex, and you could sometimes trigger Zul'Dok, and then you could play it in the early game and start putting counters on it. Maybe this has a +1/+1 counter sub-theme, but so far I've only seen 2 things that put counters on stuff. Melor Colossus, this makes sense. Has a cost reduction, really easy to accomplish. I'm looking forward to seeing that artifact ramp package, because there are 26 creatures in here, meaning a further reduction in rocks. But this makes a lot of sense to be in the deck, and it's a good choice. Myriad Construct enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 for each non-basic, and then when it becomes target of a spell, you sack it. Create a number of 1/1 construct artifacts equal to its power. Pretty cool. I like these flexible cards because, like, you see this, you could play for 7, get the counters, or you played for 4. It's kind of like they're hedging their bets with a deck build. You don't have cards that are just stuck in your hand like I was worried about. I kind of like the idea of these cards. I think we've seen 3 of them now. Yeah, Endless One, Hangerback Walker, and now Myriad Construct. Phyrexian Triniform. This just puts an absurd amount of power into play. Encore is an activated ability from your graveyard. It's not a cast, so you don't trigger your commander when you do that. You put in a token copy for each opponent, so you're putting in 27 power, and then when those die, you make, on your end step, you make 27 power worth of golems. That's pretty sick. Normally this card just, gets cut because all it is a unique stat block. Solemn, okay, you're ramping, albeit not for 2 mana or less. The going rate is it better produce a mana or get you a land for 2 mana, and then for every 2 mana beyond that, it better be producing another one. And this is 4 mana investment for 1 acceleration.
That's not good enough!
Soul of Phyrexia, I understand why it's in here. Makes your permanents have indestructible, but like, your spells are so expensive that you're going to be shields down all the time, so I don't see the point in having it in the deck. And it doesn't trigger your commander. It's just a big oof. Steel Hawkeye, this is a good colorless board management kind of a card. Its activated ability to destroy non-land permanents with the convert mana costs equal to investment is super good. It's one of the best colorless kind of removal spells on a stick that you could get. Highly recommend it in every colorless deck. Stone Coil Serpent, again, they're getting some flex. Burnish Chart costs 3 to play, 3 to sack and get 2 lands. If it was 3, I'd say we're in a good rate, but since it's only 2, I don't think it's worth your time. Golem, this is a way to cheat out your commander in the early game. It's just weird because your commander only costs 1 more, so you're not really cheating out much. You know what I mean? If it was significantly more, then that'd be awesome. The other thing is the cheating effect. It doesn't get around commander tax. It'll effectively pay for your commander's cost, but then you have to pay 2 more for the tax. I see people do this and forget that ruling or don't know that ruling, but that's how it works. Meteor Golem, just at least it triggers your commander, but it's a crappy removal spell. Artisan, it's big enough for your commander trigger, but returning a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, I don't like situational cards like this. I don't think it's worth playing because of that. The Annihilator 2 is a little negligible as well. Another pseudo Annihilator trigger, but it's instead exiling stuff, and it triggers your commander again. At least it's exactly 7. Unlike Artisan, it goes like you're paying 2 more for basically put some in your hand. I'd rather play 14 7-drops and play nothing else beyond that than play Artisan and Kozilek. Crashing Drawbridge, it makes sense in this deck because your stuff's expensive. This gives all your stuff haste the turn you play them, and it's a 0/4, so it effectively helps you stave off incidental damage. More Adopter of Paradise, I like this. 2 mana investment to accelerate your game. Solid. Palladiumer, 3 mana to get a 2 mana investment back. Solid. Scare Tiller, I would have to see the land base for me to be confident in this card, but I'll have to come back to this to judge if this is good enough to be in here or not. Suspicious Bookcase.
Hello?
This makes something unblockable, and again, it's blocking stuff. Since your dudes are significantly big, maybe that unblockable activated ability is worth it. It's all this does. Integral for the colorless board wipes. There's not a lot of options, so good job including it. A crappy card advantage card you want in your mid game when you have 3 lands of the same. Hopefully you didn't play something different in the early game, because then you have to wait longer. But when you're playing colorless, this is probably one of the better options you got available to you. Forsaken Monument, another staple in colorless decks, mostly for the middle and bottom triggers, because creatures are already big, so giving them a stat boost is like whatever, but the tapping permanents for additional mana and gaining 2 life back to kind of rubber band yourself back into the game is also really important. $12, $9. Pretty good value just with those 2. Veskir's Journal, just another not so great card advantage spell. You can max draw 1 card a turn, like Endless Atlas, based on how many counters this has, and that's based on someone else's board. So I don't like it, but you're forced to play cards you don't like when you don't have a big card pool. All right, it's just another scary creature that also triggers your commander. Another 2 mana card advantage spell that's really slow. Mirage Mirror is probably a good inclusion for this deck because people play all kinds of engines that draw cards, and that's probably what your mirror is going to be used for, so you could catch up in card advantage because you need it. And then it has extra flex to be other things as well. Good inclusion for this deck. Mystic Forge, also integral for this kind of a deck. This is actually a good card advantage spell because you'll see typically more than each turn unless you brick on 2 lands. If you do, at least you have the ability to exile that land away, so you keep the train going. It just gets a little hard to string multiple spells together because your stuff's incredibly expensive. Perilous Vault, just a crappy board wipe that you're stuck playing because you're in colorless. Transmogrifying Wand, I actually played this in my colorless decks before. I think a lot of people weren't aware of it because I rarely seen other people play it, but it's one of my all-time favorites. It's a removal spell that basically 3-for-1s your opponents because it comes out with 3 counters, and you destroy a target creature and they get a 2/4 Ox that they could care less to have. I'm glad to see it in this deck. It's a pet card of mine for this deck, and I'm glad it's in here. Lightning Greaves, okay. That's a $8 card. Fixing your big boys, slow stuff. Soul Ring, so So far, I've seen 3 rocks that follow my rules so far. I guess we could count Forsaken Monument as well. Odd Vessel, it's good. 2 mana. Run Dynamo, that's good. That makes 6. And Stable Obelisk, not so much. You get some density by being able to blow something up, but if you're tying up 7 mana to blow something up, that means you don't have a 7 mana spell in your hand to play instead. Not the best. In a perfect world, this costs 0, and I guess it's nice because your commander wants a 7-drop creature in play, which you have a fair amount of them. The only thing that sucks is the things that you were hedging, like your X spell creatures and that weird construct populating one won't count because their CMCs are effectively 0 and 4. So I don't see this card being ideal that often. The dream is you have a 7 CMC creature in play and you have your commander and this costs 0 and you get 2 cascade triggers. I just don't live
Aboard the imagination balloon!
I expect a lot of wrenches to be thrown in your game plan. I guess that's where Lightning Greaves comes in handy. Keep an integral piece that rubber bands you back in the game alive. 2 mana situational removal. At least it's 2 mana. It's just not guaranteed, which sucks. I guess you could add that to my stipulations of removal spells. It has to be guaranteed, and this is not. Breaks my rules. Not 2 mana, and it's situational, thus not guaranteed. Don't like it. Don't have a lot of options, so you're forced to play it. I feel like Warping Whale, it has a lot of text, but it doesn't do anything particularly well. We're just going to move on from that. Dreamstone Hedron. It produces 3 for 6, so you're effectively getting that 1 for 2 mana. You got 7 good rocks in here. Flowing Chalice, 8. Okay. This card's good in the early game and in the late game, so good job putting this in here. Fire Shrieker. If you put this on the right creature and that creature gets in, you could probably kill them. It just sucks that Kozilek's not your commander because that's when you kind of want these double strike, double damage kind of equipments. Kind of feels a little shoehorned in this deck though. And it's not even shoehorned in nicely, it's just there. I'd rather play something else. We're on 9, Ice Stone, 10, Horn Power Stone, 11. Got Oogly Ineffable. It has cost reduction, so that's worth your time. I also like that he's got card advantage and removal. He's a super dense planeswalker. I wish his bigger brother was in this deck because you kind of need him. All right, let's look at the lands and see if that Scare Tiller is worth your time. Okay, bad card advantage from a land. Bad board wipe from a land. Good card advantage from a land. I run this in my deck. Bad card advantage for everybody. Wouldn't run this. Enters tap, so I hate it. And it has some like extra abilities to boot, but like I said earlier, your mana is going to be tied up anyways. Not only do you not want to be putting yourself behind, because you already will be with your expensive ass CMC, but now you introduce unnecessary tempo loss with this land, and then you won't have the mana to spare to activate any of these abilities, so why run it? Okay, well, you already know why I hate that card.
Keep on smiling! Oh, shit! I said over easy!
We're just going to move on. Good utility. I'd run it mine. I'd run it just because it's just the likelihood of you having 0 cards in hand is probably 0 because you have such a high CMC. You're bound to have something stuck in your hand. It could happen theoretically, but likely, nah. Shrine of the Forsaken Gods, good include. Why not? On occasion, it produces 2 mana. Makes your commander hard to kill, which is why I like it, and it comes in untapped. Why not run it? War Room, you pay 0 life to draw. Excellent. Reliquary Tower, I don't know why it's in here. You'll probably never exceed your hand size, ever. I kind of wish they saved the money because it's a $5 land and just put that somewhere else. You don't need it in this deck. Okay. Utility, can't be blocked. More utility, untapped. Your targeted removal freaking blows anyways. I guess you could work deals with your opponents, and if they have removal, you could help them out by basically taking away Hexproof and Shroud from a target creature that's difficult to kill. Eldrazi Temple, perfect in this deck. Adds 2 for your color or for your Eldrazi spells, which you got a fair amount in here. I don't understand the utility of this card. At least it comes in on tap, so I can't like bitch and moan too much. But you put a counter on something. I don't know if it matters though. You're running 1 Planeswalker, and your creatures are so big. What's an additional counter good for? I think you will depend on the mana way more. I don't like the tempo of this card, so I hate it. I like this card. If you have nothing better to do, it's like, why not put a storage counter on it. It ties up 2 of your mana. You'll have clunky opening turns anyways. Might as well. Could include. I am actually not a fan of Temple of the False God. I know the allure of it. Having a land that does nothing, if you have it in the early game, is undesirable and unwanted. I like the utility on this because it lets you gain life back, but it's for each creature you have, and you won't have a whole lot of them, so it's not even a good rubber band effect in the utility. And then we got all the Urza lands, no effective way of tutoring them, so you're playing the Pray to God game, and maybe you get all 3. Then 15 wastes. I did not see a single land in here that sacks itself. So why the hell is Scare Tiller in this deck? You could, I guess, put a land in from your hand, which you're basically playing with 1/2 of a card. This is a lousy ramp. Cut this immediately from your decks. Okay, so let's go over the closing thoughts. There are only 11 ramp spells that are worth your time in this deck. That's not good. Not good enough in this deck. So Obtrusive Archaic is not serving as a Volcaic Key kind of thing. I guess you get to copy Zul'Adok's ability, but there's going to be so few of them that I think having these 2 in play is a bit of a pipe dream. Man, the only card from these 10 that I like is Rise of the Eldrazi, which like I mentioned, there are better cards for that same CMC or cheaper that do it better. They just poorly built this deck. Let's count how many spells they have that you could potentially trigger this off of. So there's 17 spells in your entire deck, that's 17%. I think in a single game, on average, you'll be lucky to get 2 triggers off of Zul'Adok based on those numbers. Thus, I don't think it's worth your time. The price of the deck. $161. I think the stores that are selling it for that price are out of their freaking minds. Out of all the decks I've looked at, I think this deck is the absolute worst. You're going to be spending a lot of time doing nothing. Ramp package is subpar. The payoffs is subpar. And then we get like random +1/+1 themes in the deck. That doesn't make any sense to me. Why did they put that in here? And they don't really have a good plan for protecting Zul'Adok. Realistically, you can expect to be doing nothing in multiple turns in a game format where you can't afford to do nothing on multiple turns. You could hardly afford to do nothing on one of your turns. This deck just blows. This price tag is ridiculous. I don't know where they come up with that amount. You could get some good staples from this deck, but Kozilek's getting a printing in the base set, so this is going to get cut in half in terms of monetary value. Reprints that are worth your time is probably War Room, Arcane Lighthouse, and Forsaken Monument. All is dust. Everything else is gonna be less than $5. So I just totaled that up, and we don't even crack $50, but you're willing to pay triple the price for this deck. Just doesn't make any sense. To be honest, these 2 decks are the worst of the 4. In terms of ranking, I'd put the Enduring Enchantments number 1, the Planeswalker deck number 2, the Sliver deck 3, and then the Eldrazi deck 4. And it doesn't make sense why these are priced more. It doesn't make sense for these to be priced as high as they are in general. On a lighter note, I am incredibly grateful for the amount of time that people have put into watching my videos and subscribed. My channel has grown at least double since I started this adventure. It was tough making a video a day or every 2 days, and sometimes 2 videos a day. I don't know if people really know the amount of editing that goes into it, but it's time consuming. And even though I put myself out there on Reddit to be ridiculed, I'd like to see them try it themselves. There's a reason why a lot of people don't do it. There might be a lot of Magic content creators out there. I don't think a lot of them last very long, but I'm going to be around to stay. I like editing.
I love you too damn much.
It's a really good hobby for me. And I love Magic, and I love making recommendations to players and making them stronger consumers and stronger deck builders. My gameplay videos is kind of more of a increasing skill kind of stuff. If you watch those, that's where you can get that kind of information. I see some folks really value my opinion on things, and that's very flattering. I'll never judge someone else for picking a card in their decks, and I think you should be allowed to play whatever you like. Everyone grows at their own pace, and it's not in my interest to be, I guess, ridiculing players for their choices. I don't see the point in that. If they want to get better at the game, then you could accept my recommendations or you don't, and that's perfectly fine. It depends on the request. I've had people ask me, you know, what would you do better with this deck? And that's all I say. Normally I make recommendations and I give a very loose recommendation of what to cut, and it's always going to be trim from the top and get rid of the fat. If they ask me something more specific, if they are feeling desperate and they're like, please help me, I will make a very specific recommendation. In that scenario, I expect people to take it. Because in that scenario, I'm really evaluating each card in your deck, and your deck is your deck. It's not my deck. It has your identity stamped on it, and it's not our collective of ideas. I'm just a small part of it. Even I make mistakes, and some of you know that if you know me on a personal level. I think why I have so much experience in these things is that I choose to live with them when I make them. Like when I gush about a card on Reddit and then I misread it and someone corrects me, I leave it up and I let the I let the card fall, and I'm okay with that because I remember the lesson. Same with my gameplay. When I make a mistake in game, I don't take it back. And it has propelled me to be attentive to detail. If you want to be imparted with something to learn from and grow from, I think that's the best way to start. And just want to say, have a good night.